On October 11th or 12th, depending on your time zone, Pluto stations direct in Capricorn for the last time for more than 200 years. So this is a big deal. And in honor of that, I've got Timothy Glenn here for round 8 of our Pluto series. Welcome, Timothy.
Thank you. We've got quite a series going here because it's taking a long time for Pluto to finish the job in Capricorn and be fully established in Aquarius.
Yeah. So that happens on November 19th. So today we're going to talk about from October 11th to November 19th. But we talked about this before we started. We're going to kind of back up a little bit because there's a lot happening in early October.
Well, especially with the eclipse season. And we're still reeling from this Piscean eclipse that just seemed to unleash a lot of water trouble.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. A lot of meteorological phenomena seems to be off the charts right now.
Yeah, so we've got a comet in our solar system. We've got this extra mini moon asteroid possibly interacting with some of the water. And then the eclipse in Pisces conjunct Neptune. So, no boundaries of any water. And then we've got this nova, which anybody's guess of exactly when that one's going to explode. So lots happening outside of our normal astrology, but we do want to get into kind of how that plays into what's been happening, including the massive flooding in the Southeast United States. So anything that you want to bring up kind of early October before we even get to October 11th?
Well, yeah, let's talk eclipse because this one is off the chart too. Actually, no, it's on the chart because we can look and we can see, okay, we got the sun and the moon right there together. Okay, that's very nice. And then we've got Black Moon Lilith involved in this. And just 1 degree away, we've got Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is really going to pop the lid off things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I expect lots of opportunities for shadow work.
Oh, yes, for sure. With Black Moon Lilith, you're always getting shadow work. And there's so much going on with this eclipse that in my video that I put out earlier, I didn't even talk about Estrella, but Estrella is also right there at 10 Libra. And so that's the star goddess, which is often associated with the sign of Virgo, but really connected with justice and Lady Justice. And so in Libra, there is this extra energy of kind of lawsuits and justice. And with Black Moon Lilith, it's going to be like the dirty lawsuits, right? The sordid kind of lawsuit stuff. So that's coming up, but then also with the trauma marker of Black Moon Lilith and just what's happening in a lot of places in our world. I mean, it's not even just in the southeastern US. There's a lot of flooding happening in Europe and, things getting ready to overflow in the UK. So a lot of trauma, refugee kind of energy just up right now.
Yeah, and we consider too with lawsuits and lawfare and whatever else that's going on out there, there's a lot coming to the surface now about, shall we say, unlawful and illegal and pretty much immoral deeds done by different entities in the political realm, the entertainment realm, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Expect more and more of this to come to the surface.
Yeah, because the eclipse just kind of sets the stage for the next 6 months. And so while Pluto is in that final degree of Capricorn, the top-down authorities, there is this kind of lurking energy of lawsuits and just like the discovery phase of lawsuits, especially with Mercury right there conjunct the eclipse. This is not stuff that's going to stay hidden. It's stuff that's going to come up and we're going to hear about it.
We sure are. And don't forget, Uncle Jupiter's over there, ready to change directions in good old Gemini. So he's going to want to bring the facts out here and put the facts right in the limelight.
Yeah, so that's on October 9th. And I'm doing this Eastern time, so I mean, anytime with the station, though, it's going to be a couple days on either side that we're really feeling that. But the big thing about that October 9th stationing retrograde is it's right on the US natal Mars.
Yeah.
So, kind of a big deal. Also, Donald Trump's North Node. So, yeah, lots happening up there.
Yeah. And of course, those who still want to maintain the old world Capricornian style top down authoritarian structures are absolutely desperate because this is it. This is last call, kids. Because once you get to November 19th and Pluto is done with the Capricorn thing, okay, now we get more into this energy of Aquarian decentralization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But that is probably going to be the carryover from whatever things we're discovering in the next 6 weeks or so. I mean, the Aquarian like restructuring is like, what are we restructuring, right? We're restructuring all of the muck and corruption and stuff that is being brought to the surface.
Yeah. And even though we do want to have all this stuff come to the surface because we want to do the shadow work, we want to integrate the shadow because humanity has a pretty deep, dark, ugly shadow side that humanity has not quite dealt with on a mature level.
Mm-hmm.
And so our collective is ready to face the music.
Well, ready or not, right? Ready or not, here comes the music. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to all that decentralization and so forth. But right now, we've got this, it's like this massive squeeze play going on.
Mhm.
October, November, this is pretty crazy.
Yeah. So on October 11th or 12th, so we have the Pluto stationing retrograde in that 29th degree, but there is so much happening that day. So I pulled the chart for when Jupiter stations retrograde on the 9th. I pulled the chart for the US.
Yeah.
And so that same day, Black Moon Lilith again is at 28 degrees 56 minutes Libra. So squaring Pluto at 29:38 Capricorn that day. But the moon will be at 28 Sagittarius, squaring Neptune at 28 Pisces. And then Chiron this whole time is like 1 degree away from the US natal Chiron. So it's like that wound, like those energies are up. I mean, healing is an option. It's coming, but it's like ripping the band-aid off or re-breaking the bone before it gets set correctly. So that's on the 9th. But in that chart, Venus is at the base of the chart. And then on the 11th, Venus is at the top of the chart at the midheaven. And so Pluto's stationing direct. The moon moves from 29 Capricorn into 0 Aquarius that same day. And it's like right on the ascendant for the Washington, D.C. chart. So there's no way that like we're not noticing this. And then Mercury comes up, catches up to Black Moon Lilith in late Libra and squares that same point. So these energies, I mean, they're Black Moon Lilith, we've not seen the last of her.
Oh, no, no, she's not finished. There's so much going on, not just on that specific time, but going up into the 13th and 14th as well. That is a real hot week there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you explain more about what you're talking about?
Okay. You know, again, depending on your time zone, we're going to have Mercury entering Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's that? Call it the 13th. And of course, on its way in, it's doing an exact square to somebody.
Pluto. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we may see some interesting information, interesting communications going on that may have some serious depth.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll keep an eye on that. But then on the following day, you've got the sun squaring Mars, which is fun. But the cool thing is the sun is forming an exact trine to Uncle Jupiter.
Mm.
So we really may see more of this truth coming out. And the old system can try to hide it. But also on the 14th, our friend Uranus in retrograde motion comes back over our goal.
Mm.
Now, we had talked about that previously. Our goal is the fixed star And actually, Ptolemy had said that's the most malefic thing we have in our entire sky. It's,
Hmm.
yeah, usually associated with, violence and all this crazy stuff. In fact, we had talked about it in July because that's when Uranus crossed Algol on the same day that Mars did. So
Mm-hmm.
Mars and Uranus, that's a lot of power, a lot of spark and energy. And as we've noted so many times, Mars tends to act early, jumps the
Mm-hmm.
gun. And 2 days earlier, that's when that assassination attempt happened.
Yeah, July 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on Algol, the demon star. That's in the Perseus galaxy. And if you remember from mythology, what is Perseus noted for? He beheaded somebody.
Oh, right. Medusa. Yeah.
Yeah, I cut off Medusa's head. And so Algol is also known as Medusa's head,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
that's that part of the constellation, or the constellation. And it's been associated with like, oh, this is bad and nasty stuff, but actually the power didn't stop just because the head was off. But Perseus was able to hold it out and use it to ward off his enemies. Here, look at this.
So like turning the table, right? Like using the tool, the malefic tool, but turning it around,
Yeah,
which is very Uranian as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so Uranus, of course, he's only going to come around anywhere in our charts like every 84 years. So if you go back 84 years, we're talking 1940 and 1941.
Mm-hmm.
Well, gee, there was a little conflict starting there.
Yeah.
Thing
Well,
called,
and certainly rumblings now.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then it's really interesting because I was doing a little bit of study on the astrology around Pearl Harbor, and Uranus had actually completed the full triple transit, but was retrograding back well within the orb of influence. Meanwhile, Saturn had come over Algol
Mm.
and had retrograded back over the second time, hadn't finished the triple transit. So when Pearl Harbor happened, you had Uranus on 2 degrees on one side of Algol. Saturn was 2 degrees on the other side of Algol.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, okay. So,
Well, and interesting that you mentioned Pearl Harbor because on December 6th, that's the day that Mars stations retrograde in Leo, but it's basically on the US North Node. So, you know, Mars energy is up, Uranus energy is up, Pluto energy is up, Black Moon Lilith. It's just like popcorn. Now, one mitigating factor in that mid-October range, though, is that Venus will be opposite Uranus at that time. So the 14th to the 15th, Venus in Scorpio is opposite Uranus, which is conjunct Algol. So there's, perhaps a little bit of softening of some of that energy. It's not Mars this time, it's Venus.
yeah. And there's always a silver lining somewhere. And we've got all kinds of fun stuff here. In fact, going back to this early October eclipse on the 2nd, we have Venus in Scorpio, Mars in Cancer, and Saturn in Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're close enough, we could call that a grand water trine.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take that as a silver lining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
But we know this is all going to come out in the wash anyway. It's going to work out okay.
Yeah. Eventually. But I mean, not to sugarcoat things because this October through November 19th, really through the end of the year, could be kind of chaotic and rough. One of the things that I've been noticing about both eclipses is the involvement of Ceres in, asteroid Ceres in this cardinal grand cross. And Ceres, I noted in my videos, it's the winter Ceres, which is when the land is barren. And just thinking about all the farmland that is underwater, not just in the US, but also in Europe. And then the strike, right? We're recording this on October 1st, and the longshoremen have just gone on strike. So who knows how long that will last. But not a bad time to kind of fill the larder a little bit. And there's this excess of water, but I actually have a lot of clients in the Asheville, Tennessee, Georgia kind of area, Florida too. And so I've been hearing from people, and so there's the flooding, but the real shortage is the water, like potable water. And
Right.
so just, kind of a heads up, you don't have to be an astrologer to think that, but might not be the worst time to stock up on a little extra food, a little extra water, especially because of that Ceres involvement.
Yeah, because Ceres likes to make sure everybody is nourished and fed.
Mm-hmm.
Got to do that because that's part of her job.
Mm-hmm.
She's a goddess of agriculture, among other things. So she wants to make sure that everybody's taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
did mention in one of your recent videos that she does bring in like this mama bear type of energy when it's necessary.
Uh-huh.
Because usually
Yeah.
people think, oh, she's going to nourish everybody, everything's nice. Yeah, but mess with her cubs,
Mm-hmm.
you got a problem.
Yeah. Well, and that's amplified by Mars in Cancer because
Yeah.
Mars, the warrior in the sign of Cancer, the mother, we get a double whammy of that kind of, you know, just mama bear energy of like enough is enough, or I don't want to see things happening to my children. I mean, there's a lot up. And so yeah, I want to focus on positive potentials, but also I don't feel like this is a time where just like spiritually bypassing and saying that everything's totally fine is necessarily the most helpful, because it does feel like this is a somber time and there's a lot of tension with the astrology.
Yeah. And years ago, I had an article using the subheading, the opt out clause.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the time I was talking about, because
Mm-hmm.
we're coming into a time when there are a lot of souls who are simply going to opt out.
Mm-hmm.
And I pointed out that the soul can see a lot farther down the road than the human personality can.
Mm-hmm.
And there are going to be a lot of souls who look down the path at a time like this, and then they're going to look back at their human component and go, ooh. And they're going to look back down the path and go, oh, October, November 2024. Can I just opt out?
Yeah.
So there'll be lots of opportunities for them to do that. And so you don't want to judge and you don't want to pass it off as though it's nothing, because the souls all have their own journeys.
Right.
We all have our own reason for being here, and we can all opt out if we feel like it.
Mm-hmm.
But this may be a time when a lot of souls choose to leave.
Yeah. It
And
could be.
you know,
In dreams, oh, go ahead.
now it's like we don't want to say, oh man, there's going to be a massive die off. Some people are saying that out there, but we don't know that.
No.
When people get pushed to the very precipice, things can change.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, there are these like near death transits that are happening on October 11th. So I've been doing all this research for this book on the astrology of near death experiences. And so now I kind of know like, oh, okay, these things show up. And on the date of October 11th, we've got a transiting yod with Neptune at 27 Pisces, Uranus at 26 Taurus, and then Black Moon Lilith and Mercury in the 26 to 29 degree range of Libra. And so it's like there is this yod happening that's involving Black Moon Lilith and Uranus and Neptune's, sudden changes, blurred boundaries. And so, I mean, that can come out as very, very intense, but it can also come out as this kind of, oh my gosh, we came so close to dying. And like you catch the glimpse of that other world. You catch the glimpse of like, oh, none of this stuff really matters. There's this other thing. And then you bring that back into the tangible here and now. And so, I mean, with Mercury, the messenger, but also Mercury's a psychopomp, right? Mercury goes into Hades, goes into the depths and comes back out. He's the only god that's allowed to do that. And so for me, I feel like, yeah, there's a lot happening, and there is this kind of very heavy death energy already happening. But at the same time, there's this near death energy. There's this like expansiveness, this opportunity to like really look at the options and really decide, oh, do you want this or do you want that?
Yeah, and what just flashed through here is like, oh, when I was in my 20s, I had my big NDE, okay, big near-death experience. It was on October 12th.
Oh, interesting.
Now, I'm going to take a look at it when we're done here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, humanity's kind of in this like near death experience. I feel like America is, but I know people from all over the world, and it's not just the US. In some ways, the US is doing better than a lot of other places.
yeah, and it has been said by a lot of people who are like, really politically involved that they're seeing their countries going through a near death experience. And they've been talking about this, for maybe in a couple of years at this point.
Hmm.
And now we're here.
Yeah. Yeah. The transits are happening. Also, October 26th to 28th, we've got another yod. So Mercury in Scorpio, quincunx Chiron in Aries, and Jupiter in Gemini. So you get the truth and like the expansion of information in Gemini. And then, the Chiron point in Aries is basically the US natal Chiron. So the wound, but also the point at which we become the wounded healer. And then Mercury, again, the messenger in Scorpio, the depths coming through and triggering this opportunity for healing. But again, those yods show up all the time in NDEs, and especially with Pluto, really doing like that final cross through Capricorn. I think we're going to see some shocking things.
Yeah. And actually, don't forget on October 17th here, we got an Aries full moon.
Hmm.
So yeah, that every time you stop and look around and run a few charts, you go, wow, have you ever seen astrological weather like this?
No, that's what I've been trying to explain to people. I mean, people are like, oh, when should I plan my trip? And I'm like, always get refundable tickets at this time because, you can plan all you want and you don't want to stop living. But at the same time, there is so much chaotic energy coming that, like, the best skill that you can really have is being able to pull your energy back into yourself, reassess what is happening around me. Okay, pivot, because if you're like putting your security on one thing or something like that, I mean, what if that gets knocked off?
Yeah. Uh, you know, this is a good time to use our sea legs.
Hmm.
Yeah, because the ship's rocking, man. And if you're
Yeah.
walking around stiff-legged, good luck.
Yeah.
That's
um
the knees.
Oh, you mentioned that October 17th full moon, and the Sabian symbol is the possibility for man to gain experience at two levels of being. So again, there is this like, alternate reality, and that tracks with so many dreams. So in retrospect, I have had a lot of dreams about this massive storm where it didn't look like it was coastal. It was like, I mean, record levels of flooding, but there's a lot of evergreen trees around. There's like, rolling hills and mountains and stuff. And you have the dreams and you're like, okay, that's symbolic. Like there's a big emotional storm coming. But as soon as I saw what was happening in the Asheville area, I mean, they're above 2,000 feet and like looking like a coastal flood. And so as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, that was what I've been dreaming about. But within those dreams, there's always this instruction of, there are safe ways through this time period. There are safe, like people show up, or your little knock on your intuition shows up and says, oh, maybe not there, over here. And I just think that kind of awareness is really, really helpful at this time.
Yeah, and ultimately, when it comes to preparation, yeah, I mean, it's only sensible to have some preparation all the time anyway.
Hmm.
because we never know when something weird's going to happen. And maybe the
Right.
trucks won't be rolling for a couple of weeks, and well, the shelves are going to be empty and whatever. So, I was a Boy Scout when I was a kid. The motto is be prepared.
Mm-hmm.
So just live prepared and not like, you don't have to be like the fanatical prepper,
Right.
but definitely part of the flexibility and adaptability here is making sure you have enough to get through a reasonable time period if things do get a little shut down here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. And like the people over there uh, in especially Western North Carolina, like, wow, what are they going through right now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well,
Whoa.
and short of building your house on stilts, I mean, that is kind of a once in a lifetime unexpected event. I mean, there were a lot of people that I kind of discouraged from moving to that area, and I didn't really know why because it was a nice area. But in retrospect, it's like, oh, maybe that was some of the sensing. But at the same time, I have heard from some amazing people that are in that area that are obviously like placed there to kind of hold the energies and to like bring a different kind of perspective to what's going on. And I feel like each of us, no matter where we are, there's weird stuff going on. And to be able to be that calm within the storm, I think that that is a skill that all of us can bring into whatever equation we find ourselves in.
Sure. And then there's this thing called faith. If of course now with our propensity for looking at big patterns and looking down the road with the astrological forecasts years down the road,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we have the feel for, yeah, this is actually going to be much better than okay, because this is the end of the old system, the old world here. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like these are the birth pangs of the new earth.
Right.
That's going to be fantastic. But while you're in the midst of the pangs, you don't say everything's wonderful, everything's fine. Say
Yeah.
get through it.
Well, yeah, and the Black Moon Lilith energy, I mean, it's associated with miscarriages as well. So, I mean, for until recent history, childbirth was like the number one cause of death for women. I mean, that was risky business. And
Yeah,
so when we're in this period of birth pangs, I think not panicking, realizing, oh, okay, there's a bigger picture here. There's something that's happening, but also do pay attention to how are you feeling, especially that like inner wild woman, right? That like women who run with the wolves kind of energy, which whether you're male or female, we all have a Black Moon Lilith within us. And being in touch with that part of ourselves makes her less hysterical, right? When you try to suppress, when you try to push it away, when you're like, oh gosh, I shouldn't say that or I shouldn't think this, she just comes up more, especially with the kind of aggravating factors of Uranus and, Medusa, right? Like that algal energy. It's not a time to repress, but it is a time to kind of step back and assess before you overreact because there's that fine line of, really just attacking whatever because you're at your wit's end versus being strategic and having that instinct kick in that's very protective.
yeah, and it's a time for all of us to have different experiences and opportunities here to do some transmutation within ourselves. Like when, okay, there's the anger. Okay, well, let's just focus that into determination.
Mm-hmm.
And we got all this fear. Okay, let's transmute that into faith, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So really, for years and years, people have asked, "Oh, what can we do to prepare?" Well, the number one thing is our spiritual preparation.
Right.
What are we doing with our consciousness?
Right. Well, and back to the NDE analogy, the near death experience analogy. I mean, the number one thing that tends to come out of a personal near death experience is you stop fearing death. And you also like you no longer need to like believe that there's some higher power. You know it. It's like you know it in your bones. And so that's that's partly what's on offer during this very intense time. And I feel like that's the part where this could be a good time. This could be a time where humanity gets the band-aid ripped off, but like the festering wound actually gets treated now.
Yeah, and sunlight is a disinfectant.
Mhm.
So let the light shine here because there's lots of stuff going on um, with, especially I still focus on Jupiter over there in Gemini. In
Hmm.
fact, uh, I'm pretty jazzed about the way this is happening because for those of us who have probed into other areas that mainstream does not approve of, yeah, there's a lot of vindication coming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Things that you wish you weren't right about, but
Yeah, it'd be wonderful if we were wrong, but oh well. Yeah, the like the thing of okay, well, what's the difference between documented fact and a conspiracy theory? Well, at this point, about 6 months.
yeah, if that.
Yeah, I think we're down to 2 weeks at this point.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going back to the thing with the lawsuits and all this stuff going on because this is overall just a desire to find a balance.
Hmm.
And that's another thing influenced by this October 2nd eclipse is to seek our balance and not just with nature as we think of as nature, animal, vegetable, mineral in the biosphere. I mean, we're talking the nature of life itself throughout the galaxies and the universes and the cosmic planes and whatever else. Universal centralizing and balance within ourselves as we decentralize in this political, economic, and et cetera game that has been played here in the Earth realm.
Hmm. Well, and that's also very Libra, the balance. So, I
Yeah.
mean, with the eclipses, Pisces, the negative, obviously, like the flooding, right? But it could be also flooding of information. It could be a flood of emotions, which, if they have been stopped up, dammed up, and then they get released, a lot of times that is what allows for the healing. And so I know I'm seeing with a lot of people old things, old childhood wounds, old stuff that you thought that you took care of. You've been through therapy, you've done the inner work, all of that still coming up. And sometimes for people, there's real panic around that or judgment, like, hey, why am I still upset about this? But you're at a different level so that when you process it, you're actually finally able to let it go. And then those waters are cleansing, right? They just wash it away.
Yeah. Because we are many levels deep.
Yeah.
And so you may have an issue come up and you're tired of this one. And so you're going to do this workshop with somebody and you find some help and you're going to do this. Okay. So, and maybe you go at it and you clear off 2 or 3 levels. Congratulations. You got stuck at 27 levels under there you just don't know about. And then the following year it's like it comes up again. I thought I took care of that. Well, okay, no, go at it again. But eventually you realize there is a core.
Mm-hmm.
And finally we come to a point where the core comes up and yeah, that's pretty yucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I do like to get across that as sort of ugly and difficult as this fall is in the Northern Hemisphere, spring in the Southern Hemisphere. But, this fourth quarter of 2024 is pretty nuts. But it does get better. There is very different energy starting in January when that North node moves from Aries into Pisces. And yes, you can get negatives, but generally with the North node, there's more of that positive opportunity. And so, I mean, that's happening in January. And then we have things changing signs in, major changing of signs in 2025 and 2026. So it's like, get through this period. And there are some bright spots, right? So November 3rd, Venus in Sagittarius opposite Jupiter in Gemini, and at the same time, Venus trine Aries, trine Chiron in Aries. And so there's this opportunity for this faith with the two benefics. Yes, they're in opposition, but it's not so bad, right? And then you have that trine to Chiron and a sextile to Chiron from Jupiter. And so there is this, the healing and the faith and the hope is available if we remember to tap into it.
Yeah. And of course, once we get into 2025 and 2026, that's really a time of really cool shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's going to be some of the old stuff that we're still working through, but so much of the new is phasing in at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, especially with the three outer planets, all changing signs,
Mm-hmm.
in a pretty short period of time. I talked about this last time and I forgot to look it up because it's been like a couple thousand years since that happened.
Where so many, well, and Saturn's changing signs as well, not an outer planet, but we have Pluto in moving from Capricorn into Aquarius, and then we have Neptune finally leaving Pisces into Aries, and then Saturn essentially doing that right around the same time, and then Uranus moving into Gemini. And all of this is kind of, with retrogrades, it's basically 2025, 2026 shifting, right?
Yeah. And of course, November 19th of 2024 will be done by then, which
Mm-hmm.
means that Plutonian energy can come in to transform things in the Aquarian mode here, which involves technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I suppose we've got some cool technologies coming our way.
Yeah, and also likely exposing some of the differences between how do I say this? Like, the tax credits for climate change as opposed to like cleaning your water and like protecting the earth and nourishing the soil and doing organic gardening. Like all of that is also very ecological. It's different than like a social credit system and tax dollars for solar panels or whatever. Like I think we're going to see in the same way that we've seen things getting dug up about the top-down authority, we probably are going to see some shifts in terms of what has been presented as ecological versus really truly regenerating the ecology and all of that. So that's another thing to look forward to. But again, we still have to get through the last part of Capricorn.
Yeah. And yeah, it's not comfy cushy. We understand that. In fact, for a lot of people, this is their opt out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they do. And and there may be a lot of souls incarnate here amongst us now who may simply go back into the cosmic recycle bin. And so how can we judge that? Because how many times were we in the cosmic recycle bin?
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we decide, okay, enough is enough. We're going to graduate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Period.
So some other bright spots, because I don't want this to be all negative, right? November 2nd, Mercury in Scorpio trining Mars in Cancer, and Mercury also sextile to Pluto in Capricorn. So that's a day where we have a little more harmony. We have a little more niceness before Mars moves into Leo.
Yeah. And since we're focused on this is the last leg of the journey of Pluto going back and forth over that cusp into Aquarius, back into Capricorn, over into Aquarius, back into Capricorn. Now, finally, station direct for the last time, and this is the last run where it's the home stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking also at November 19th, when it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, now we're in Aquarius. However, just 4 days earlier, Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, stations direct.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice little nudge in a more positive direction.
Mm-hmm. And that happens right around 12 Pisces, just for anybody, if you've got anything in mutables, that, say 5 to 17 of any mutable signs, you're going to feel that more than most.
Yeah, there's just so much going on. And it's always fascinating to see where it's playing out in the individual charts.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not the same for everybody.
No. Well, and even people that have similar transits going on, I mean, especially with Pluto, since that's kind of what we did this series on, and we've talked about this before, that you can do a lot with Pluto on the psychological level, on the deep dream work, looking at the symbols, looking at that kind of stuff. It doesn't totally protect you from having a extremely disruptive life event, but it goes a long way. And so, culturally, collectively, that is a way to kind of make it through this next 6 weeks or so, is look at the big symbolism, be looking at it as a story, of mythological importance. And where are you in that process as the hero or as the heroine of your own journey? I feel like that's a way of engaging with both Pluto and Neptune that could be much more empowering than just feeling like, oh my God, I got hit by a tsunami and now there's a big flood. It's like, well, that's one way that could play out, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. And many years ago, when I was going through a certain phase, I came up with this term, excruciating self-honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're bringing stuff up from deep, deep within, which Pluto will enjoy doing because that's his game, but if we can't face it, that's a little trouble. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, besides, one of the problems that we encounter is people tend to identify with the stuff which is just trauma-based rubbish from the old matrix.
Mm-hmm.
It's not who you are. It's not what you are.
Right. Well, and I think as the truth revelations keep coming out, I think we're also likely to find different crisis points for some people where everything that they thought they knew, I mean, it's sort of like a brain injury, right? When I had my brain injury in 1998, it took away everything that I thought I was, right? I couldn't do academia anymore. I couldn't read. I couldn't do my sales job anymore. I used to say that my sales job was so easy a monkey could do it, but I couldn't do it after I had my brain injury. And there were just like all of these thought patterns and ways that I processed information, which were gone. And what it made me realize was, oh, I'm deeper than that. Like I am more than any of those things. And so, I mean, all of us are at a different level of awakening, and we have our blind spots and then other areas that we're like laser focused on. But it's likely that a fair amount of sort of the collective consensus reality is going to be demolished in the next 6 months. Maybe sooner, but certainly a good wrecking ball coming in October and November of 2024. And just to think of that more like a sculptor, right? Like here's the stone. What's in that stone? Like what is Michelangelo going to do with this stone? I mean, you can have something chipping at things and be resisting it, or you can look at what is being created.
Yeah, David was in the stone, right?
Huh?
And all he had to do is chip away everything that wasn't David.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds easy.
Yeah.
But our internal processes may not be easy, but really, when it comes right down to it, they're usually simple.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like choice of faith or fear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So right before Pluto enters Aquarius on the 19th, we've got a few things. We've got on November 11th, Venus entering Capricorn. So moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn. I mean, that's going to be a change in values, I think. There is with Sagittarius, I mean, a value of truth, the value of being able to be outspoken. But with Venus moving into Capricorn, I read that like we may see a little bit of more stabilizing, like that could be a bit of a stabilizing influence. And then there's this full moon in Taurus on November 15th, and that's at Taurus 24, so close to Algol, close to Uranus, so this liberating kind of energy. An Indian warrior riding fiercely, human scalps hanging from his belt. So that's like, oh, this revolution will be televised. Like somebody is victorious in some way shortly before that, and then that's the day that Saturn stations direct in Pisces is November 15th. And that degree is Sabian symbol Pisces 13. An ancient sword used in many battles is displayed in a museum. So, I mean, that makes me think of like Excalibur or something like that. But there is this very potent warrior energy coming up, but it's almost more like the sacred warrior.
Yeah. That's another thing that is shifting immensely as humanity really awakens and steps into its own divine creative power. And, because that warrior energy simply steps forth and takes responsibility and gets things done.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about fighting all the time.
Right. Yeah. And not like toxic masculinity or something. I mean, with Mars and Cancer, it's like there is this being in touch with the feelings. I mean, that's the positive of it, right? The mama bear energy, so the very strong female energy, but also this respect for like the heart of the warrior, the heart of the defender kind of energy. So, I mean, there are these bright spots.
Yeah, and ultimately, if we just remember, like Rumi had said, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is the one infinite energy field. Everybody is the field. Everything is the field. And if we approach things from that perspective, then certainly we'll have a much different world here.
Yeah.
There's so much of this coming out of us now. And yeah, it's not real comfortable when we're tearing band-aids off. Because a lot of us have a lot of band-aids yet to tear off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and just a lot of trauma too, because there's the experience. And when you're in the experience, there's a lot of adrenaline happening, right? Like when you are in like a life or death kind of situation, there's certain physiological responses in the body that get triggered, but that's not sustainable long term. And it's like when those hormones and everything kind of start to shift, that the real healing needs to occur. And so I feel there's going to be a real need for people that do energy work, people that are, talking about astrology or other spiritual things to help to situate, give perspective, give understanding. Because I know for me and for a lot of clients, especially like a past life reading or something like that, it doesn't even necessarily matter if you can prove it, but it's like if you can have a reason for something occurring, or like man's search for meaning, like this idea that, again, putting yourself in the story and seeing, okay, where is this leading? What is developing? How am I growing? That can often really make the difference between just giving up and realizing, oh, there's something else for me. There is something else to move towards, not just for me, but for the collective as well.
And another thing that we can shift is meaning.
Mm-hmm.
That occurs like on the mental realm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So is the spirit that created the mental realm and the emotional realm and all this stuff, is it subject to the interpolations and extrapolations of the mental body? Mm-hmm. No, you're free to make up any meaning you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's another area where we can be flexible. Mm-hmm. And to think that we still have people out here willing to fight wars over belief systems. And we can sit back and say, oh, look at them fighting over those belief systems. And both belief systems look pretty stupid to me. Whatever, dudes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and a lot of that is also that Sabian symbol for or 29 degrees Capricorn, so 30 Capricorn, right? Because we round up. Uh, a secret meeting of men responsible for executive decisions in world affairs. That's that last degree of Capricorn. And so many of the wars in our world are decided by, these secret committees behind the scenes. They're not fighting. They're not going to the front lines. They're not doing any of that. And so, people stepping up, people recognizing, I see you, I am a person, we don't agree on everything, but like, here's the common ground. And I feel like we are going to see more of that as the stakes raise, because the higher the stakes, the more it's like, oh my God, wait, this is not worth annihilating the human race for, right? Like this is not worth any of this. And so I do feel like a lot of those superficial differences are going to be set aside.
Sure. And values will become really different.
Mm-hmm.
Because what has been valued in this old system, this old top-down control grid, well, let's just say that for the vast majority of humans, it doesn't quite meet our standards. And so we can step forth and stop allowing our consciousness and our energy to be hijacked, step more into our universal creative power, because the new earth is ours to co-create.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do it.
Yeah. So that seems like a good place to end here. Unless you have anything else to share.
No, it's cool.
Yeah. How do people find you?
Soulpurposereadings.com.
All right. And we will be back before Pluto moves into Aquarius for the long haul for round 9. So we'll try to get that out about a week or so ahead of time. So you take care. Everybody else take care. And we'll see you soon.
And just get through it.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.